So this is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. I'm Andrew Savage.
And I'm Nancy Richards, and we
And
have a
today
very special guest.
we have a very special guest today, Cliff Hagen, Democratic candidate for the 51st Council District. Welcome, Cliff, to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here speaking with you both.
Good to have you. So, well, let's start off with Cliff. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, your background and why you decided to run?
Sure. So my name is Cliff Hagen, right? 28 years an educator with the Department of Education here on Staten Island. I've been born and raised on Staten Island. I grew up in Westerly many, many, many years ago. My family is 300 years on Staten Island, so it's a long lineage here on the borough.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
Not many of that.
and so I have a deep respect and love for the borough. I love Staten Island, I really do, and I've committed my adult life for decades serving the communities here on the island. Not only am I a school teacher, I worked for a place called On Your Mark, folks who advocate for our special needs community. Worked there for more than 25 years. And I am a longtime environmentalist, advocate for open space, the preservation of open space on Staten Island. I was the past president of Protectors of Pine Oak Woods, now celebrating their 50th anniversary. A very successful organization that has worked to create wonderful parks across the island, including Mount Loretto, Blue Heron Park, Goodhue Woods, Pouch Camp. Protectors has really shaped our borough of parks through the years. And I was proud to be their president the past 12 years. I stepped down about a year ago. I'm still involved with the Friends of Blue Heron Park, the vice president there, the Friends of Blue Heron Park. And each year I help to orchestrate the Scarecrow Festival. As long as there's no rain in the forecast, we have hundreds, maybe thousands of people come to Blue Heron Park to make scarecrows to bring home, put on their lawns. It's a wonderful community event. And recognizing the good work I've done for so long on the island, recently, about a year and a half ago, Borough President Fasella appointed me to Community Board 3. I was pretty proud of that as well.
Oh, good. Okay.
Excellent.
And so, and then also, you've been doing these walks that have been getting a lot of nice attention. The owl walks.
Sure. So during COVID, and environmentalist as I am, during COVID, I started to share my time out in the woods with people on Facebook. I couldn't gather together with folks. So I went out in the woods and I offered Facebook Live walks through the woods at night. And I would call the owls. We called them owl prowls. And
owl prowls, yes.
Dozens at first, and eventually hundreds and even thousands of people started to watch the videos. It was a really neat experience. And it brought a lot of comfort and community to people who were home, stuck indoors, right, quarantined, isolated. It really continued to connect people. And the owl prowls were fairly successful.
That's amazing. And so every time somebody says they're an environmentalist, I think the average Staten Island voter probably is like, oh no, are they going to make me drink from paper straws? And so it's good that you're bringing that perspective of just preserving our natural spaces and really warding off any kind of effort to profit off of them, because we've seen on Staten Island that any stitch of land is, the real estate agency smells blood in the water whenever they see an empty patch of land. So
it seems in New York City, the real estate lobbies has quite a bit of power, right? And here on Staten Island, myself and Protectors of Pine Oak Woods and a whole group of people have been fighting over development for decades.
Right.
And we've had some success.
I mean, on the North Shore, the whole fight to save Mount Moressa, that was a huge fight. That it was a tough fight in regards to, and that was on the North Shore. So, and just development throughout the borough.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been here since you were born. And your parents in regards to the progression of development, what it does for traffic congestion. Speaking of congestion, we have a hot topic today. but it does. So it so we have to really think. I used to joke that I would go on vacation and come home and see a neighborhood built on the empty lot next to my house. So that's how fast development happened here.
Blink of an eye, sure.
Yeah.
And you could speak to any realtor, and they'll tell you the value of a home close to a park is increased. The closer you get to a park and open space, the value increases. There's value in maintaining and preserving open space on Staten Island.
Yes.
Absolutely. And just Nancy brought up congestion pricing. So the news of the day is that President Trump has withdrawn a key federal authorization for some kind of work related to congestion pricing, and that has effectively halted congestion pricing in New York City. Now, I know congestion pricing and the animus it brings on Staten Island is bipartisan. Democrats, Republicans, the UFT all signed on to a lawsuit fighting congestion pricing. But from my point of view, where it stands now, and the governor just announced she's going to take this to court, as I expected her to. This is all going to be tied up in litigation for who knows how long. So what does this actually mean from somebody who has advocated on these issues? You were with our electeds when they made their sentiments known about congestion pricing. What's your take on where this all stands now?
Sure. So when the UFT brought action, Mike Mulger actually reached out and asked if I wouldn't mind signing on as a litigant. Being a Staten Islander and being an environmentalist and an educator, I agreed, of course, because if you read through the MTA's environmental impact statement, you'll see that they acknowledge pollution on Staten Island will increase. Right? There's going to be environmental damage here on the island. Our kids will suffer. I have the numbers here. Particulate matters rise at least 3%. Volatile organic compounds rise nearly 2%. Nitric oxide rises 9%. Carbon dioxide rises more than 1%. Folks in Manhattan, some of the wealthiest communities in the country, they would see a depreciable decline in all of those pollutants. But here in Staten Island, it would increase, and that's not right and just, right? So I was initially all for preventing congestion pricing from moving forward. I could appreciate the change of things today, right? I appreciate that Donald Trump stepped in and put an end to this congestion pricing, as they say. I would have preferred that it was taken up in the courts initially, and that the courts looked at the valid information, the valid arguments, and I'm sure the courts would have sided with the UFT and the elected officials. It seems Donald Trump has inserted himself in New York City affairs. I don't know that was necessarily the right course of action because, again, here we are. We're going to be tied up in court for another 6 months, 6 years. Had they just allowed the court to play out, maybe we would have had the same resolution, right? An end to congestion pricing. I think that would have been the right way to go about this.
So it does nothing essentially because the pricing toll will probably remain in effect until this is resolved, probably by the Supreme Court or by one of these appellate courts.
I wouldn't presume to know what the courts would say on that.
Okay, fair.
So we're saying in regards to the fact that Trump just waved his magic wand is not going to stop congestion pricing. It really has to go through the governor. What
through the courts, right? The courts should have been allowed to make this decision.
Well, then this was
ultimately they will.
Yeah, I think this was all just another performative thing that Donald Trump did to make himself seem more powerful.
The hero.
Yeah, the hero and powerful and, stepping in, saving the day. Whereas in reality, this, like almost all of his actions initially over the last few weeks, are going to be tied up in court for who knows how long the duration. So Cliff, I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago and they said, and I told you too, I said, you're doing God's work running on that side of the island as a Democrat. What made you decide? I know you have this long resume, you have this this extensive background of community service and doing all these wonderful things for Staten Island. But what made you decide to jump into this race at this moment?
So it's the work I've been doing my entire life. There's not a lot of difference. It's just another venue to continue my community service. Right? It's not a new experience for me. I've been involved in the South Shore community for decades. And there's opportunity at City Council to work to make the South Shore of Staten Island a better place. It's already, I mean, I think, generally speaking, folks think of the South Shore of Staten Island, the District 51, as being a very monotone culture. Right? There's a lot of Italian restaurants down here in the South Shore. They're all delicious. But actually, if you look at the folks in the 51st, it's a really international group of people. There's a lot of diversity when you run up into New Springville, up around the Staten Island Mall. And I want to shed a little light on that and get more of a voice of the community involved in the community affairs.
That's a great idea. Well, when I heard that you were throwing your name into the ring, I was very excited because I've known you since college, and I know that
we go back, yes.
Yeah, and you were a good activist then. You were, and you're a voice of reason in my book in regards to, and I think you would bring someone who's been there a very long time and understands the community and has a good perspective, and you are a voice of reason. And I was very happy to hear that you were going to try to run for City Council. And
thank you.
I posted I posted something, I commented on Instagram, and somebody made a comment. I was like saying, I pretty much said the same thing I just said right now, but somebody remarked, "This is Trump land. It'll never happen." How would you respond to that?
There's some truth in that, right? Trump did receive the bulk of the vote here in the 51st district this past election. And
what would you say to people who did vote for Trump in regards to why they should vote for you?
So while out petitioning down in Tottenville and Charleston and Eltingville and communities around the South Shore, I had those conversations with quite a few men and women wearing Trump hats and Trump shirts. And what I said was, he won. Let him do his job at the national level. That's terrific. We now need to worry about our community and what we have going on here locally. You could think globally, but we need to act locally, right? And so that really sort of diminished a lot of their concerns. They're very worried about having support for Donald Trump. And once I acknowledged that, yeah, he won. He is the president. He's doing what he does. Now we need to be concerned about our community here on Staten Island. Quite a few of those folks signed my petitions. They said, yeah, all right, I'll vote for you. They want somebody of the community, concerned about their community, looking to make the community a better place.
And so speaking of Trump, I know you were just trying to distinguish the national from the local, but what I find is that it's increasingly difficult to do that in this day and age.
Today it certainly seems today. Yes.
Yeah. And and Nancy actually wanted to have you on many weeks before you declared your candidacy, because you were very vocal about a windmill project or an energy project on the South Shore that would have created over 700 union jobs that has been halted by the Trump administration and by one of their executive orders. He has an irrational hatred of windmills for whatever reason. And so where do things stand there, and how have voters in your prospective district, how have they responded to the news that one of his orders has essentially deprived their district of something that could bring economic stability and environmental clarity?
Sure. And I think that's a struggle for a lot of the folks on the South Shore, folks who would support Trump through anything. But when met with this unfortunate reality, they struggle with that. It does seem to be a bit capricious to sign off on what would have been a very positive, beneficial project here for the South Shore of Staten Island. We even worked out as president of Protectors of Pine Oak Woods, we met with the Economic Development Corporation of the city, and we explained they were spending nearly $500 million for this windmill project here on the South Shore of Staten Island, and they were taking quite a bit of open space, and nobody was stopping them. So we suggested that maybe a few of those dollars could be spent compensating the community, offsetting some of the damage they were incurring by taking that open space, and they agreed, and they were set now to do some mitigation in Jamaica Bay over in Queens. And we're now trying, well, I shouldn't say we, Protectors of Pine Oak Woods now is trying to negotiate that mitigation should take place here on Staten Island.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Where was the, you said they're taking up the space. Where exactly were they looking to set up on the South Shore?
Sure. Just between, it's Richmond Valley Road, if you take it to the terminus at Arthur Kill Road.
Mm-hmm.
So from Richmond Valley Road north towards the outer bridge, there's a large swath of property right along the shoreline. And so they would be taking a lot of that open space. And if you move further up towards the old LNG tanks, there's a piece of property tucked behind the LNG tanks there that they were also looking at for some of the work.
And so for the South Shore, the benefits would be 750 new jobs?
At least that, right? There would certainly be those jobs and the tertiary benefits of having that workforce in the South Shore, right? Every deli is selling more coffee and bagels. Every pizzeria is selling more pizza at lunch. There would have been a trickle down that would have been wonderful for the Tottenville, for Charleston, even just shopping at the local stores, Target and Home Depot on the way home from work. Those 750 people would have been spending those paychecks in that community.
Yes, that's very
true. So it really has hurt. It will hurt. It'll unfortunately impact those communities.
Absolutely. And I always find it, though, difficult. And maybe we'll see, because we see people around the country who supported Donald Trump. With the dismantling of USAID, we see farmers talking about how this has negatively impacted them, because they were the ones who produced a lot of the food that would go to USAID and be sent to places around the world that needed it. I always wonder how much of a personal hit do people have to take before they realize that we need to do something different. And so, but that's not for you to answer. That's my own observation.
We'll find out, I suspect.
I guess we will. We just had Senator Chuck Schumer do a press conference in front of TJ Maxx in Port Richmond regarding the fact of some releasing of some regulations where it's going to cost people in regards to bank fees, and just in regards to having credit cards and banks incur like more fees for people. I had I switched over to MCU because of this, but I had an incident where I had a Con Ed bill hit twice, and at the time it just kind of spiraled and made everything kind of bounce back because I wasn't prepared for that second bill.
Sure.
And the fees that I incurred were ridiculous. It was about almost $300, and it was Christmas time, and it was like, and the banks were like, sorry. And I was like, it's not a lot of money, but I'm taking my money out, and I went into, municipal credit union. So I understood in regards to having those fees. And then if you look at kind of the interest rates that people are paying now, we are in debt more than, in regards to with inflation. That's how people are coping, is they're just, putting more money on their credit cards to buy groceries. So, so we'll see how, like you said, Andrew, like what is going to be the magic bullet where people are like, he's really not fighting for us.
Yeah, this all comes due eventually.
Yeah, so we will see. But in regards to local issues, what would you find is an issue that city council should be paying attention to in your district?
So that's a great question. I appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm concerned with. Um, you got me stumped now. That's a great question.
Oh, okay.
I have an answer for you. There's a number of different things. For example, the wind that we were just talking about, the wind energy we were talking about, right? Congestion pricing now seems to be off the table. Of course, that's an issue. Um, the the bike lanes along Highland Boulevard, unless you live down in Tottenville, I'm not sure that you'd appreciate the impact those bike lanes have had. Is completely unnecessary out there. And the taxes we pay on our homes. I know it's a Champagne problem down here in the South Shore. We own beautiful homes, and our taxes have risen through the years. We're certainly paying too much tax on our homes. That is correct as well.
It's not a Champagne problem. I don't see it. I'm a Democrat who argues that homeowners who are landlords are, they're working class still because they're a paycheck away. If their tenants don't pay the rent, they lose their mortgage. So the fact that someone was able to purchase a home on the South Shore doesn't make them exclusive to, a lot of people surfacely look like they're doing well, but behind the scenes, like I said, they're paying it off with credit cards and they're a paycheck away.
You and about your issues with Con Ed, and that's what I was thinking. As a homeowner, we've all experienced that. We've all been in that place where we are living paycheck to paycheck, where we're dipping into our savings, we're maxing out credit cards to manage our finances, and it's a challenge, right? That's a life experience that I, of course, am bringing to this. I'm not sure that my competitors have that life experience, but that's important to note. Yeah, that even though folks own homes and may have had the great credit to get that home, it's still a challenge to maintain that home for sure.
Absolutely. What would you, I know transportation is a big issue here on Staten Island and even more so on the South Shore. How would you increase, what would your plan be to increase the transportation options on the South Shore?
So I suspect we need to mend some fences with the MTA, right?
Yeah.
As soon as our local elected officials came out against the MTA's plan, amazingly, our services were cut. There was a diminishing return in services. Yeah, quite a bit. And so that needs to be addressed and rectified.
That's fucked up. That's fucked up.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah, they played hardball. That's how government works. And so what I would say is my daughter, I sit on the bus stop with my daughter every morning, waiting for her bus to come. She takes the bus right up Highland Boulevard to high school. And we watch a number of different buses go by, buses that go into Bay Ridge. The 79 goes into Bay Ridge. And she has this amazing little app that lets her know when the buses are arriving, so we know how to time it best. But there are very few 78s running up Highland Boulevard, right? There's one or two 54s. Again, it's just the lack of service. The buses into Brooklyn, there's two or three of them every 15 minutes or so.
Oh, I know that because even though I'm in the North Shore, I see the 79 and the 93 up at the corner of Highland and the Service Road, and they're all. You don't see a 78 very often at all.
So that leads me to the point that maybe we do need to look into. There's been talk of a ferry into Bay Ridge from Staten Island, and I'm not sure from where. Maybe from the Staten Island ferry, and I don't know if they have a landing in Bay Ridge. But that's a conversation that needs to take place as well.
Well, I was saying we were talking with Mike Colombo was running for borough president. Mm-hmm. We were like, we're the island, we're the borough, we're the island, and I mean Manhattan's an island, but I just find it interesting that Brooklyn has a ferry that goes from like Greenpoint to Atlantic Avenue, to Red Hook, and they have all these different other transportation options, but Staten Island, like we should be the first place people think about that, for a ferry. I think it's a great idea that there's a ferry that goes to, I'm having a senior moment here, Rockaways.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a long, train ride.
Sure.
And so the South Shore just seems perfect that they should have a commuter boat that goes into, Midtown. That 20. My cousin takes a ferry from New Jersey, takes C Street from
Yeah.
Atlantic Highlands
Hmm.
to the 30s on the east side. It's there in a half hour.
Sure.
That's a half hour commute from, mid New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, those for-profit ferries, right? They're for-profit. They charge folks, I don't know, $20 for that ride from the Highlands. They're getting hundreds of millions of dollars of subsidies from the city, and
Really?
they're a for-profit. Yeah. So there's some lack of transparency here in the city, right? There's some things that we need to take a look at.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
I think you're the person who can do that.
Absolutely. And speaking of transparency and connecting local and national issues, the last couple of weeks have really been just an exercise in brazen corruption in City Hall and in Washington. And it's very clear to me and to a lot of people that the mayor is compromised. He is clearly receiving his charges either being dismissed altogether or dropped with leave to represent if they feel like it. And in exchange for his cooperation on certain issues like immigration and whatever else they could think of. And so you're the Speaker of the City Council, who you would be serving with if you were elected, Adrienne Adams. She is called on, no relation to the mayor, she is called on the mayor to resign. Do you share that position? And what should we do in the city to promote more accountability and less corruption and good government?
Sure. And similar to congestion pricing, I think the court should have been allowed to play this out. It should have been played out in courts. It seems very cavalier that the governor should dismiss the mayor, that the president should impose his will upon the mayor. That's not what city government is supposed to be. It's, for the people, by the people, we the people. And you can't just dismiss the vote of the people of New York City. So I think it should have gone through the courts. Maybe it still will. Not sure where we're at with that right now.
And so, well, there was a hearing today. I'm not sure of what the outcome is because technically a judge still has to approve of the charges being dropped. And I'm hoping that the judge says, no, screw you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're innocent, play this
That
out.
would be the right and just course, right? That's what
Yeah.
the courts are there for.
I think they did. I have to double check that. I thought I saw that. So
They upheld the charges or they dismissed the charges?
and I'm going to go to my Trump administration polls. Okay, it's not it.
Well, and I think that I think other departments like the City Department of Investigation, I think should do much more work than what it does on these matters, frankly.
Sure, they need to do due diligence, and we need to see some of this evidence, right? There's been a lot of speculation about what's being held against the mayor, but again, lack of transparency. We don't know what that evidence is necessarily.
And I know that you think that the courts should play this all out, but do you think that he's compromised now?
I think I think the real estate lobby here in New York City is a very strong, powerful lobby. Yes.
But do you think the mayor is compromised just by whatever deal he's made to?
Again, it's speculation, if you would, right? But he put forward the city of yes, which really changed the zoning code across the city.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I suspect that had a lot to do with the real estate lobby.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Well, do you think he can serve independently now? I know you said that the governor shouldn't dismiss him, but do you think he could serve without fear of reprisal from the president? Because remember, these charges were dropped, but with leave to represent, so they can bring him back anytime they feel like it. Do you think that impacts what he does?
Well, the people who work for him thought it would. I suspect that's why they all walked off the job, right?
Yeah.
It seems the people who supported him have been fleeing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would hope that I always thought that the city council should have much more authority than what they do. And I know that statute limits them, federal law and state laws limit what they can do as far as legislation is concerned. But I'm always hopeful that they could be a little bit more forceful and assert their power. What about the Medicare retirees for the UFT? I hear a lot of issues on that front. The
Mhm.
retiree plan is very different from what they were led to believe they would receive upon retirement, and they would have to pay a little bit more than what they were before.
Yeah, that whole conversation shook up the UFT, changed a little bit of the leadership at the UFT, right? The retirees
It did.
elected a different leader, and good
Yeah.
for them, right?
And
That's what union's all about.
there's a push, I like where I sub a lot. There's a lot of people who have become more active in looking to, put different people in power. And
Hmm.
so I have seen, and these are people that I'm always glad when the UFT members get active as opposed to complain. Because
Yeah.
I've worked where we've had very, just let the union rep do it, as opposed to no, if you disagree with, the leadership's decision making, you need to become active. It's not really, it's your union. And so, regardless of whether I might agree with that caucus or not, I'm glad that they're becoming active. So,
Yes.
so that's good.
And
But the answer is no decision yet. So,
No decision on the Adams thing.
yeah.
no.
So getting back to the Medicaid, exactly what you're suggesting, Nancy. A couple of years ago, Mulgrew may have a smaller group of people speaking with him regarding the Medicaid, right, for retirees. But once people got involved and spoke up, he was responsive and he stepped back and said, I agree with you. We will not change plans.
Yes. So that's,
It's
a union is,
that choice.
it's as good as its people. So, I'm I'm honestly, I really think we need to go into the schools and do a little like union training with some of our younger members. Might be something like retirees can volunteer to do, because I think people have lost the importance of having a union and what it really means. Um, it's not just simply like, the same person who is like, nobody challenges, their chapter leaders anymore, because that person's been sitting in that, but nothing changes. I know people who won't speak at a union meeting because they're afraid their chapter leader is going to go back to their principal. Like I I said once at a meeting, I said, what happens in the union meeting stays in the union meeting. It's like Vegas.
Yeah.
Um, so and I don't think people are. So Andrew and I worked for a very toxic administration where we both left, um, because as far as so it union's important, and I'm glad when people get active, regardless of what my position is. It's that it's the union, so they're in it.
Sure. We have the finest pension system in the country, right? The strongest union, the finest pension, the finest retiree benefits. The TDA is
Strong.
above par, yes, for sure.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. I
Yeah.
mean, how many times I've seen people's life savings being gambled away by, pension systems that have put their money in the wrong hands. And that's important. That's a city, you know, that is so important. I don't think people realize. And even in this day and age, like I'm living off of, my pension right now.
Sure.
And there's something to say that it I know that it's stable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's if I dare say, it's a conservative choice we make early on in our careers. Right? We could chase the dollar in Wall Street. We could go into business. School teachers are talented people. We choose to serve our community. We choose to live that conservative, moderate life with moderate savings and knowing that there's a terrific pension at the end of it all.
I did that. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, when I look at my reasons for initially entering the DOE. It was just a temporary job. But
Sorry.
it was like, like I was just in it for a few years. And but in regards to there's a stability that it has. And after 9/11, I recognized the importance of the stability that I never saw before in my life. There was something um, that changed. When people say like 9/11, 9/11 changed a lot about my life. So, living on Staten Island. So I appreciate the conservative, the stability, and 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 you do see it in its constituents as well. But we work well together.
Yeah.
So
And just one more issue point, Cliff. So I know that there's been a lot of talk about public safety and crime, and what changes could be made legislatively to make people more safe. I know a lot of that has to be done through Albany, but what would you propose as a public safety measure to make people feel more safe? Because even though the stats look good as far as crime is concerned, it's not where people are as far as what they feel getting on the subway or walking the streets. So, what would you do as far as public safety is concerned?
Yes, you're talking about making people feel safer, right? It's
Mhm.
not necessarily that they are any safer or that they weren't any safer in the past. Um, and it's really that sense of community, bringing that sense of community, letting people know that they are protected by their precinct, the 123 down in Tottenville, the 122 along Highland Boulevard. Um, and I guess just bolstering community engagement with the police department and the community, right? Letting them know that they are safer.
I think in the 51st, like I do notice in regards to a lot of community events, the NYPD definitely do come out, night flight, things like that. I think
Mhm.
is that the event they have? You see that a lot of Midland Beach and down the South Shore.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to bring up in regards, just so people understand that there's two elections. So
Yes.
let's talk about the logistics of the election that you're currently running for, and then the one when you win this election that you'll be running again.
Yeah.
So
So I appreciate that, right? It's really two campaigns at once, two for the price of one, if you would. We just on Tuesday submitted our petitions. We needed to get 450 good signatures from the district. We had over 700 signatures, delivered them to the Board of Elections up in Manhattan for the special election. In another couple of weeks, we're then going to have to start collecting signatures for the general election in November. Which is a similar process, except the special election, anybody could sign a petition as long as they are registered voters. In the general election for November, it has to be a Democrat signing for the Democrat Party. So there's
That's more of a
a little more
challenge.
work involved there,
Yeah,
right?
that's more of a challenge for
fighting the
sure.
Democrat. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and then the threshold, that the financial threshold with the finance board, the campaign finance board, you have to raise $5,000 from at least 75 people who live in district. And if you manage those two thresholds, then you start to receive the matching funds. And so you had to set up separate accounts for both elections.
Oh, what a pain in the ass. My
It's
God.
a little bit of extra work, yes.
Yeah, what a pain in the ass. But it's worth it, and
And
just
what it does, it sort of minimizes the people who are running, right? You have to be a legitimate candidate to meet those thresholds.
and
we're
this election is April 29th, yes? This
April 29th, with, I believe, 9 days of early voting.
and you
okay.
have to live in the 51st, right?
Yes, that's the way America works.
We would have made the trip. We would have made the trip.
I appreciate that.
I would have went down to like, the movie theaters down there and vote no.
I would have went to the conference house to vote for you.
There you go. Thank you.
Let me ask, what can supporters for you do to help with the election in April and then also down the road? Like what kind of support? Of course, everyone's vote, but in regards to
Mhm.
what do you need in regards to support?
Yeah, thanks. So right now, as I said, we finished the petitions. Right now, we're then looking to finish up the financing, trying to max out our contributions. So if anybody's interested, I'll share a link with them. They can reach out. I'll give them a link for contributions. Once we get the contributions for the special election completed, we'll then work on the petitions for the general and then contributions for the general. In the meanwhile, through March and April, we're going to be putting together a couple of fundraisers, maybe Monday night pizza or something. And we are going to be knocking on doors up in New Springville, around the mall, all the way down through Charleston and Tottenville, right? We're going to try and knock on as many doors as we can. So if anybody is interested in joining me or spending some time on their own, be happy to share my literature with them and invite them to go knock on their doors and campaign for me.
Okay. And do you have a website? Do you have where can people go if they want to?
So we had to put together a quick little website to meet the threshold for campaign finance board. We're flushing out the website now. I think it's Cliff for City Council.
So, well, then let us. Is it up and running as we speak right now, or
there's something there? I'm not sure how fulsome it is.
Should we check it on our phones here?
Yeah, I'm checking on my computer in front of me.
And so you are a candidate in a field, since this is a nonpartisan election that's taking place in April. You have a few Republican opponents. You have Frank Morano, basically, Rush Limbaugh, shock jock type, who had a long radio career and saying crazy things for a long time. Most of the elected incumbents are supporting him. And then you have a Nepo baby with Cliff Vasella, and his father is supporting him, of course. And so how would you distinguish yourself if you're talking to voters, especially in a nonpartisan election? They don't have to be registered Democrat or Republican. What would you say is the distinguishing feature of your candidacy versus some of your opponents?
Sure. So let me just qualify. Frank lives a few doors down. He lives 3 blocks from me. Got a beautiful little home, and I've never listened to his. I sleep at night. I have not listened to his overnight show. I'm sure he's a talented guy. He communicates very well. We sit with each other at community board meetings. We sit right beside each other. So what I would suggest, what distinguishes me from my opponents there is, I'm vested in the community. I'm at the twilight of my career, right? I've been working for more than 30 years advocating on behalf of Staten Island. And this is not a new career for me. I'm not starting out something new. I'm not looking for an opportunity to change my hours of work. I'm looking to continue my good work, advancing the needs of our community. That's why I'm running for city council. And I wouldn't besmirch the motivations of others, but I know mine are true and sincere.
Oh, leave that to us. Leave the besmirching to us. We'll do it.
I'm just very good at besmirching.
I'm very good at besmirching.
Besmircher king.
Yeah, Griffin is his name is Griffin Facel. I was shocked. I thought when I saw the article, I thought maybe I taught that kid at one point. I thought maybe I taught him maybe like 5 years ago. He looks so young.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you, Cliff. I mean, you have been an active member of the community for years, and you are continuing, and that's why I was so glad to, like, I'll say it again. I was like, yes, that this is a good Democrat choice for the South Shore, and because my complaint sometimes with Democrats is sometimes we just run anyone. I'm like, who is that person? I've never saw that person before. Like
Sure.
I'm more of a person who's more active in the community, and some Democrats are more for people who can raise money. But I think you could raise money if you have the public support and people behind you. So people who know you, definitely, can get behind you. Maybe we can have a fundraiser with an owl walk, so
Yes, I like that. That'd be great.
that would be great. If you need a comic or an MC, I'm your girl. So I'll volunteer. I'll come down to the South Shore for that.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes.
thank you, Cliff, for coming on the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you. The special election is April 29th. There's going to be, you said, 2 weeks of early voting, yes?
9 days. I believe it's 9 days.
Okay, so 9 days of early voting.
You both know how it is. You both work for the city.
Oh, yeah.
You ask 3 different people the same question. You get 6 different responses, right?
Absolutely.
So it's hard to flush out what the reality is.
Yeah, so this is the most immediate election coming up, and then of course you're campaigning for a full term. This election fills the term of Councilmember Borelli, or former Councilmember Borelli, who stepped down to serve serve as a lobbyist, and so he's elsewhere now, and that term goes through January of next year, and then in November you're going to be campaigning for a term of your own.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Cliff. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you both.
Send us the link so if we can post it on our site. So if people want to contribute, donate, or volunteer, there's a place for them to go, and we'll definitely post that. So
excellent. Thank you.
Okay. And we're rooting for you. So best of luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, and enjoy the week off, right? Well, you don't really have a week off. You're running now, but
yes, there's not a moment to spare. Yes. Every day there's something to do.
Yes.
But it's a lot of fun. Again, being engaged in community all these years, it's nothing new for me.
Yeah, so this is the Left in the Forgotten Borough podcast, and I'm Andrew Savage.
And I'm Nancy Richards, and we want to thank our guest Cliff Hagen, who's running for 51st District for City Council, for speaking with us today. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.